In this episode, we're going to find out about the 1980 Olympics in Tallinn. This is Fragments of the Future. So look, I said I promised that I would make these videos authentic. So here's what happened. I wrapped filming and was ready to start editing. Then I was at Tallinn Music Week last night and I got talking to two very cool people, Retti, who's a musician, and Carolyn, her manager. Hi, Retti and Carolyn. Go and check out Retti, by the way. I'll put a link in the description. They told me that there were tours, special exclusive tours of the Linnahall. They're all sold out. Tallinn Music Week managed to get me on to one of these tours. So we are going to go and have a look inside the Linnahall. This does not happen very often. Come with me, let's have a look. So as with a lot of Soviet stories, the truth is very slippery. It makes me think of Chernobyl. Everybody says that the Linnahall was built for the Olympics. Was it? Well, what is true is that during that time in the run-up to the Olympics, there was a lot of building work in Tallinn. One of the main reasons that Tallinn was chosen to be the Olympic sailing venue was because they had a visionary mayor at the time. The mayor went to Germany and he saw Kiel, where they were building the sailing events and venues for the Munich 72 Olympics. So he had some insight. He knew people in Germany and he managed to go there and had some insight. And he sold it back to Moscow that he knew how to run the sailing. He'd been to Germany and it should be in Tallinn. Moscow gave the sailing to Tallinn. And once that decision was signed off, there was then a lot of money. So Tallinn could build other things, some accommodation, university buildings, post office, the TV tower, the airport, all these other projects. Linnahall was going to be built anyway. It'd been on the books for a long time and it came around the same time as the Olympics. Now, apparently there's a guide who goes around here saying, this is the Olympic swimming pool for the 1980 Olympics. That's not true, but it certainly came at the same time. Now, Tarkovsky filmed the film Stalker around here. That was when this was really a dead zone. It was one of the inspirations for Christopher Nolan, who filmed Tenet here. That was filmed here in Tallinn during COVID. And in fact, some Estonians I was talking to last night told me that they remember seeing Robert Pattinson on the tram when they were filming it here. This is the stage on which Duran Duran and Bonnie Tyler played in the 80s. Lots of 80s stars came to Tallinn. This is the main auditorium of the Linnahall, which opened in July 1980, just before the Olympics. It opened for a Soviet Congress, so just before the Olympics. It's almost entirely intact, surprisingly so. People break in here all the time to have a look around, but I'm on an official tour today, doing it properly. But it's very strange to think of all the concerts that happened here. But it is like a time capsule. It's like going back to 1980. Our tour guide was telling us about the communist times, reminding us that you would have an organisation where 500 people would be working, but only 50 people would need to do the jobs. So 450 people would just be stood around doing nothing. It was a time when everyone had a job. So it was a structural shock when capitalism came in 1991. Estonia got its independence, and it got its freedom, but there was a price to be paid, and you had to live within that capitalist system, which was different to how it was before, when people were sometimes just sat around smoking, and there was that kind of mysterious feeling of what was anyone's job. Was it just the Chernobyl filling in forms and ticking things and making the Moscow bureaucrats look like they were doing a good job? A very strange system, and one that was obviously structurally unstable, but is capitalism better? This is the foyer where the audiences would come in before they would come to see the concerts or the opera. The windows behind look out to the Baltic Sea. It's so strange when you go in these buildings and they're deserted. You think about all the times that people have been in here before, all the things they've seen, all the concerts, all the people that have been through here. It's so strange when you see a building that's become abandoned. How did it get to that state? Welcome to the inside of the Linnahall. Not many people get to see in here. People come in when they shouldn't, but I've come in on an organised official tour today. There's still a recording studio here. There was nightclubs here at certain points as well. All sorts of things have happened. It really is a kind of microcosm of the history of Tallinn, and incredible to come inside and look at it. It's the entrance where people used to come in to the Linnahall, which was, in its day, named the Lenin Palace of Sports and Culture. Obviously, independent Estonia changed its name back to Linnahall. You recognise the building from Tenet. A lot of the action happens in the main auditorium and then throughout the building. Some Estonians told me that they saw Robert Pattinson on the tram when they were filming in Estonia. Now, apparently, the idea that it was inspired by mine architecture is not strictly true. The truth is that they were inspired by Swedish castle architecture, by bastions and defensive walls, and you can see Tallinn has a defensive wall around the city. That was one of the inspirations for the design of this place. They used really high quality dolomite stone from the island of Saaremaa. The only problem was, with all the other Olympic building sites in the city, they couldn't find enough people to work on it. Oh dear. It was not finished properly. In fact, some of the workers were prisoners, apparently, and soldiers. This is Tallinn's airport. This was newly built for the 1980 Olympics as well. There was an old airport from, I think, the 1920s, which you can still see on the other side of the runway. But this was built in the late 70s. There's a great picture of it. When it opened, it had plush leather sofas over there in the check-in area and lots of pops of orange, brown and orange, very 70s, amazing. Sadly, they have been removed, but the airport apparently was inspired by the vernacular architecture of these barns that they have in Estonia. So it's got this slanted roof, which you can see goes up here. It's a very cute little airport. Today's Estonia is modern, forward-looking, international. They've built a very impressive and successful little country with Tallinn as its very cool little capital. I've been at Tallinn Music Week for the past few days, and this shows you what Estonia is like. A guy came up and started talking to a group of us at reception yesterday. We were all saying, what do we do? He said, what do you do? I said, I'm a writer. I said, what do you do? And he said, oh, I'm a member of parliament and a former ambassador to Canada and the USA. You just start talking to people like that. And I reminded that guy that I'd seen the former president of Estonia, Thomas Hendrik Ilves, DJing at a previous opening party for Tallinn Music Week. Him and Thomas are friends, apparently. Everyone knows each other in this country. Thomas, by the way, former president, I was talking to him about how much he loves Blondie, The Clash, and Nirvana. Imagine having politicians like that in other countries. That is what Estonia is like. That is what Tallinn is like. A complicated legacy, a complicated picture. Um, this history of the USSR, they're uneasy with it. Even the Tallinn, like 1980 involvement in the Olympics in Moscow, it's not a simple picture, but you know they recognise it as a part of history, and they've built this great country, and we all love it. I'm not being paid by them, but I do think Estonia is great. You should come here. The Estonian Song Festival grounds. These grounds are big enough to take something like a tenth of the entire population of Estonia. Every 5 years, tens of thousands of people gather here to sing, and they've been doing this for centuries. Music and song and choirs are essential to Estonian culture. Now, this huge stage was built in 1958, beautiful, modernist, clean lines, and the Song Festival then took place every 5 years until 1988 when things changed. Now, from the Olympics in 1980 onwards, rebellion had been fermenting. The Estonians could see a chink in the Soviet armor and the chance for them to become once again independent. And that was building through the 80s. Now, at the 1988 Song Festival, things got political, and song became a medium that the democracy protesters and the politicians used to try and win their independence back for Estonia. When the Soviet Union collapsed, Estonia got independence in 1991. It was referred to as the singing revolution. Music was central to it. And music is central to Estonian life today as well. I've been at Tallinn Music Week, which is a brilliant festival which happens every year in April. And last night I saw one of the amazing Estonian bands that you always get, this shoegaze act called Marine K. And Marine K is actually huge amongst the young people of Estonia. It was really funny to see all these teenagers in the front row singing along and getting very overexcited and fanish over Marine K, who was something of a underground indie star here. And I thought it was also quite funny how they were into shoegaze, this music from the early 90s, music that was very popular when Estonia got its independence in 1991. The Song Festival grounds on the other side, we'll have a look at those, are where the performances take place. It wasn't going to be an easy Olympics to plan. The vote was narrow, 39-20 for Moscow over Los Angeles. Moscow narrowly won out, and then, of course, Los Angeles would then go on to host the 1984 Olympics. Now, the Soviet Union had been engaging in a war in Afghanistan, which was ill-advised, like all wars in Afghanistan are, as the British and the Americans and countless other powers will tell you. The ostensible reason for the boycott of 66 countries, no less than 66 countries for the 1980 Moscow Olympics, was the war in Afghanistan between USSR and Afghanistan and the Taliban. But it was also a more general East versus West thing. At that time, of course, the world was split into two blocks, NATO and Warsaw Pact, and then they were playing out proxy wars in Central America, in Africa, and this was another one of those sort of parts of the Cold War, one of those conflicts. So 66 countries, including, of course, the USA, were not present at the 1980 Olympics in Moscow, and then by default, obviously, here in Tallinn as well. And then, surprise, surprise, at Los Angeles 1984, the Russians and their bloc boycotted the Olympics. And fun fact, I do have a LA 1984 mug with the Olympic mascot, which I believe was an eagle. Thank you for joining me to look at how the Moscow 1980 Olympics affected Tallinn and Estonia. Hope you've enjoyed this episode of Fragments of the Future. There'll be more soon. Please subscribe or leave a comment if you've been here. My name's been Christopher Beanland. I'll see you very, very soon. Bye. I'm so paranoid I've got bed bugs or fleas from those seats in the Linnahall. I shower everything down.